Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Midwest Weekly, starring myself, Hairwiz, and my co-host, CLT. We are here to give you a breakdown of Week 1's action across the LOL Midwest Sweat League. So with that being said, let's have CLT give a little information about himself just before we start so you get to know CLT a little better. And then I will tell you a little bit about myself. Just a quick little thing about yourself, CLT.
Yo, what's up? CLT. Been a mid laner. I've played off and on in the LOL Midwest leagues. Was part of team that won the last iteration of the Rec League, and then played a season in Sweat League, and then subbed here or there. I've also got a split in the Ryzen League as well, where in the first split I made the playoffs and lost to the eventual champions of that league there. So, um, appreciate Hairwiz including me and letting me join him in this journey.
Absolutely. And to clarify, I think CLT wanted Team Team to win last split, but they unfortunately did not. They did become the runner-up though. They did lose to the eventual winner, Sad Jellyfish.
I was
So
rooting for them. Yeah, you got me there.
yeah, it's okay. As far as myself, some of you may know me as the jungler for Small Brain No Mechanics. I joined the league last year around this time actually for my first split in 2023. We have not yet to win one, but we are definitely on the rise and looking to do so this split. So all teams should definitely watch out. Other than that, I've peaked in Diamond, hit D2 specifically the last split. I'm looking to try to grind for Masters. Probably not going to happen because I'm trash right now, but that's okay. Other than that, though, I'm just trying to do this thing where I get to talk about the thing I love, and that's League of Legends, and CLT is trying to do the same. So, with all that being said and out of the way, why don't we get into this week's games? And we're going to start off with the first series here being my series actually against Insane Banana Posse. So I'll go ahead and open this up and we can kind of talk about the first game here. So CLT, do you want to lead off with anything in particular?
Um, yeah, yeah. The draft was interesting. Akshan is not something you see often, but you're so scared of it when you do see it because the people that play it well are the only ones that pick it. Um, I thought the Xerath pick into it was interesting. I know he can farm against it, um, but it's really hard to lock down Akshan. Smolder Janna is such a really safe lane um, into Jhin, Leona. So there was a lot of scaling opportunities and counter engages from Insane Banana. But overall, I know there's a lot of lockdown and slipperiness with Akshan popping off this game from Small Brain No Mechanics. I know you played the Amumu quite well and had some pretty key bandage tosses. That set up your Akshan really, really well. Stanley performed so well this game. Had actually like 42% of his team's damage this game, which is insane.
Yeah, no, that he had an absolutely crazy performance. I highlighted that actually in my head, the fact that he came in to our team. This is his first split playing with us, and he just had a really awesome like show out as his first performance. So I really loved that for him. Um, our team is learning how to play together with him, so it's been a bit of an adjustment. We used to have Zema. I don't know if everybody knows who that was, but that was our mid laner for the last two splits prior to this split. Uh, he is still part of the team, but he has demoted himself to a sub. So life stuff, going on. But enough about that. But yeah, it was a fun series to personally play in. Insane Banana Posse is one of the new teams in the league, so they were really interesting to kind of learn like what they like to do. War Initiate specifically is the captain, so I've got to talk to him a little bit, get to know him. Seems like a pretty cool guy, but the team was really really respectful and a good experience to play against. But as far as that game one, I'd like to kind of touch on since we can literally talk about it since I was in the game, so you're in my head, right? The draft was really fun for me. I got to kind of dissect the draft, and the big thing was just trying to pincer their jungler on the certain picks we wanted him to play. But he didn't even do that, and he ended up pulling out the Fiddlesticks, which I didn't see in his match history. But I had the Amumu, and Amumu is a counter to Fiddlesticks, and it's pretty good. So just kind of went with that. Though I will say the Fiddlesticks did shine in this game, well with the Xerath. They did a lot of damage, and were finding the little small incremental picks they could to kind of keep themselves in the game. From what I saw, even though the Akshan was obviously running rampant around the map doing whatever he wants.
Yeah, Fiddlesticks. He was farming well, and I know he put some pressure on the top side of the map. But then once Akshan started to pop off and roam, it became very difficult for him. I know he had a couple of good ults across the Raptor brush into mid lane. When you guys engaged on him, he can counter engage really, really well. So um, it's a pick that's nice to show, and then once you get real proficient at it and teams learn how to play with it, man, Fiddlesticks can be very scary.
Yeah, he was bullying Vic up top, like as far as ganks go. Vic only died 3 times, but I think the Fiddles showed the most presence up there. I don't really obviously have that stat for you guys, but for what I remember, he's like, this Fiddle won't stop ganking me. And we were all laughing. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that the bot lane had the control. Fidsick and Mono, they had a really, really nice level 1 early, and then from that point on, or maybe it was level 2, but it was early fight down there in the bot lane. They won that fight, and then from that point on, Fidsick and Mono kind of just did what they wanted, and Fid just moved around the map, set up plays for the Akshan, set up plays for Vic. We just kind of moved together at that point.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to highlight him too because he had an unbelievable game there, finishing with a score of 3-1-14 on Leona, and even did more damage than myself.
Yeah, you're gonna hear Leona pop up a lot during this first episode.
Yes, we'll just ignore the fact that there's a huge stat that I've only talked about a million times on stream. We're just not going to
Yeah.
talk about it. It's not being brought up, okay? Let's go ahead and get into game two. Though, actually, before I do that, we should note the bans. Was there any bans that intrigued you on either side for game one?
Uh, I mean, there was a lot of focus on jungle. Not knowing what all these players play yet, the Rek'Sai ban kind of stood out. It's not a champion I've seen often, but it still fits the theme of jungle. Jungle. I mean, even Gragas is considered kind of a jungle ban as well. So, and Poppy. So, out of the 10 bans, 8 of them, 7 of them are jungle. So, it doesn't surprise me that people had to go deep into their champ pool. I think you picked a Mumu early, which also then forces Flamedog to go deeper into the champ pool, hence the Fiddlesticks. But yeah, there was a lot of focus on jungle bans.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the reason why we banned Poppy was in case, because I talked about playing a Mumu, as well as a few other picks, but that's why we ended up banning the Poppy in particular. It was just to make it so I didn't have to worry about being stopped by the Poppy W, which is very, very strong. And it was good into some of our other team champions like Leona as well as Akshan too.
Yeah, Poppy could definitely stonewall your guys' comp quite a bit.
Yep. All right, so going on to game two, we did have some small changes in the bans, so we'll just stick to the bans here as we go into game two. The big changes here was the Xerath got taken off the table early on, and then we saw on our side the Akshan being taken away. So basically, both mid laners were banned after their performances in game one.
Hmm.
What is your take on that? Was that good bans by both sides, or do you think you would have liked to see some different bans from each team?
I mean, the Akshan had to go. It's so hard to keep track of him, especially if you're limited on targeted CC. Um, but the Xerath ban was also interesting. I think you guys just wanted to put him on something a little bit different. Um, there was also a lot of jungle bans. Lilia ban was interesting because she was left open last game, so the Lilia ban kind of stood out. But yeah, it ended up turning this into a very like short range versus like short range comp.
Well, we should talk about the big, red herring in the room that is the Darius Jungle, shall we? Because I think that was like the highlight of that series, right? This man just comes out of here, and I'm not gonna lie. Listen, Flame Dog, you are really good on that Darius, bro. And I did not expect you to actually pick that in jungle. I actually thought it was a top lane pick. So when I saw you whip that out, bro, I was like, what? So all kudos to you, man. I love that. I love seeing the different picks. What did you feel about their draft and the Darius jungle?
The Darius, which I believe was picked early, I thought was going top lane as well. But then when I seen Ornn come in, I was like, okay, I know War loves that Ornn. He played it really well game one. So game two, he was going on it. So I had a. Then it kind of led me to believe it was Darius Jungle, and he played it really, really well. He ghosted at the right times. He showed up everywhere, and he played it like a madman. Um, that carried insane bananas through the early and into the mid game so well. Uh, I think at one point he was like 6-1, just everywhere on the map from it. It was weird watching a Darius like out ganking a Moo, and I'm sorry to say that because I know you're the Moo, but he was everywhere.
No, listen, all hats off to him. I think I personally, as far as we want to talk about the series on the jungle spot, he, especially game two, he outjungled me, and I have no problem saying that. I did not have my personal best series by no means. My team totally carried me, and I'm fine with that. Sometimes you just gotta be carried. But he just, yeah, he ran the map. His first gank was really good, and it was crazy because I was down there, and we were again like, this Darius gank is about to happen. Like Fid just felt it, and I just didn't get there in time. He called where the freaking Darius was, and next thing you know, we're getting our butts slaughtered down there. So, and after that, he just ran the map. And to answer your question, he actually wasn't 6-1. He was 8-0. The man did not die until the
Oh,
game ended. He did not die
oh,
once until the very end of the game.
yeah. The thing that really stood out watching that game was it was into Ziggs York, and he put so much pressure and got all, I believe, all six grubs, or at least 5 out of 6 grubs, away from York Ziggs, which was big. It was massive. I know he traded, I think, a dragon or two to you guys for it, but keeping grubs away from specifically York is so insane. And then they lane swapped. I think Ornn went mid with Gwen top,
Yeah,
so that also made sure that the York pressure didn't get too out of control early.
I agree. It was a really quick, uh, you know, team when it came to taking turrets at that point. Gwen, Darius, and Ezreal can just destroy turrets so fast. So the grubs were really, really good, and I agree with you. Keeping it off Ziggs and York, who are just as good, if not better, at pushing turrets than all those champions, is phenomenal game plan by the side of Insane Banana Posse. Uh, the only other thing I feel like to note in this series would just simply be the fact that I feel as though Insane Banana Posse's uh, team was very well balanced across the board. Like I think all of their team played really really well together, and they knew how to play around objectives and how to counter a lot of things we were trying to do. But I don't know how long they've been playing together. Four of my members, which myself, so not Stanley, we've been playing together now for over a split. So we built a lot of synergies, and that helps us a lot, even when one of us is having a bad game, let's say. So that's the biggest thing of note for me. But that Flame Dog 40, my guy, you had a great series in general, in my opinion, and you really really popped off on that Darius. And again, so all kudos to you. Anything else to note about this series for you, CLT, or shall we move on?
No, no, it was a interesting caught by Banana, and I thought they were gonna get outranged, but uh, man, they played it well, and it ended up being a little bit too much for them. The range advantage, I think, was Ziggs, and York pressure ended up winning this game for them.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next series then, and that's going to be between Boomer Squad and Denver Nuggets. By the way, hope they don't get hit with a copyright claim because you guys named yourself Denver Nuggets. but it's all good. I still like the name, and I love the logo. By the way, this is a fantastic logo. I just like to point out it's great. And then we also got Boomer Squad and their golfing, which that is also fantastic to be named
Yeah.
Boomer Squad. So this series, what is let's just start with this. Let's try to start at the core of the series first. The pick bands, right? So let's start with game one here with these bands and picks. What are your take on that? Was there anything that stood out to you here?
Uh, I think this is the first time going through all the series that Leona actually hit the ban list. Um, and then Aurora got banned a lot this series. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, and if
there.
you're sorry, CLT, real quick, if you guys are wondering what that when you're watching the stream, why it's showing in the bands, literally nothing, and you're seeing just like a black circle with the number, that is Aurora. I think Battlefy hasn't caught up to the new champion yet.
No, no, they have not.
Yeah,
You can see that on the stats page as well.
yeah. So I apologize, CLT. Continue with your thought, though.
No, going into this match, this lobby definitely had some higher ranked players in it, so it was going to be interesting to see what picks they would brought out, what was comfortable. This game one, if I remember the draft correctly, it was Quad AD, and then Boomer Squad picked Malphite into it, which I thought was a very like solid pick. No pun intended there. But then when we got into game, I noticed that it was actually Smolder bought Draven mid, which was very interesting. Um, Draven mid in the Malzahar, he gets a lot of stacks off the Voidlings. Uh, and I think cashed in super early. It was like almost a 700 gold cash in. Yeah, it was like 693 on the cash in, which was massive. Accelerated Draven really well. And then Malzahar being the last pick into Smolder was kind of interesting because Smolder can just in the mid game stack off the Malzahar Voidlings. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe they just picked it for comfort. Um, and I mean Malzahar does provide lockdown for Draven Smolder, so there is some kind of back and forth between those picks. But overall, Boomer Squad's comp double AD with frontline and thresh utility and escape performed very well. Smolder had 41% of his team's damage. Whew, that's a big number. Um, there, yeah. So,
Yeah, that Smolder was having himself a great day, especially in game one. Bore overall across the series, and you'll see that when we talk about game two. He played phenomenal in this series, but the rest of his team did too. But let's looking at. I'm trying to remember here. So guys, pardon me for a second here. Um, I was trying to remember a specific fight because there were a couple fights that were pretty close early on, but there's nothing I just can't recall it. So continuing to touch it on though, I don't want to like drag on trying to remember what I'm trying to remember. I agree with the Draven pick. That was an insane pick. Something I wasn't expecting, especially mid. But I feel as though he must be an AD player because I think he does in game two also pick an ADC. Let me
he
just.
does.
He does. Okay, I was gonna check. But okay, yeah, he does. So he might just be an AD player. I don't know. Though we did have this meta where everybody's been picking AD everywhere. Like we've seen it across other like regions in the pros. They were just AD carry mid, AD carry top, AD carry. It just doesn't matter. We're just running AD carry. It was buffed obviously, and it was strong. So, but I think it is falling out of favor a bit, and I do believe, generally speaking, you do want other damage sources as well as CC and tankiness in the team. So when you generally go a heavy AD comp like that with multiple ADCs and lanes, you might miss one of those key things that usually are important for a team comp. But in this situation, for the side of Boomer Squad, it didn't really matter. They didn't have a lot of AP, but they still just ran over the map once their two carries got ahead. And that was the biggest thing. Uh, really, nobody could do too much. Orange Peel did kind of do his best to to kind of negate that, but it was really just him and Victor Apple just trading back and forth kills. I remember watching that and just laughing at how hysterical it was. They kept fighting. It didn't matter if anyone was ahead or behind. They just kept going at it like true top laners, men of culture out here, you know.
Yeah. Yep. And then looking ahead to game two, um, as you noted, Tang, their mid laner, I thought he was playing the Ziggs because I know Ziggs is really, really good in the ASOL, but then they swapped and Ziggs went bot, which I thought was interesting into Braum, and it turns out Ziggs Rakan post level 6 is nasty. Like they tower dove Braum Jinx at least 2 to 3 times to my memory. Like Rakan just literally pops ult, dives in, and almost suicides, and then Ziggs just unloads. Plays Bomberman and just blows up the whole bot lane. So yeah, that was I was not expecting that, and that was an interesting combo. Um, yeah, it was interesting. I know similar to game one, you noted that the top laners just brawled like men of culture. They kind of did the same thing here, even though it was Quinn versus Darius. There was so much back and forth. Darius had a couple of good apprehends to pull Quinn out of the dash. Got a couple kills under turrets. But yeah, overall, this was a pretty fun game to watch.
It was, and I was loving the Rammus pick when I first saw it. I remember getting really excited, but the problem here was there was a lot of AP damage this time around, especially from that Ziggs, but also the mid laner. Even though he went an AD carry once again, she does have built-in AP damage as well. So he wasn't as tanky as he could be in that game and provide as much as he could if there was certainly more AD heavy comp. Still a fun and exciting pick to see, though. I love Rammus. As well as the Quinn. We do not see Quinn very, very often. Almost no one plays it. I have a friend who does specifically play it. He played in the split a couple, 2 splits ago with our team. Shreeze, I'm going to give him a shout out. He's the only person I've ever honestly seen play it that I can recall up to this point. So that was hype, too, to see something different. The Quinn was played pretty well, though she didn't really get to roam as much in that game, and I don't know if that was more because the Darius was holding her in check necessarily, or if it was just the Darius trying to split push, because he did try to do some split pushing to try to keep the Quinn away from that. But once the map started to break open, and once Boomer Squad started to get this massive lead that they would eventually get, I think at one point, I want to say in this game, it was close to 10K at some point too, they just couldn't do much. Like, it didn't matter what Darius did. Everybody would just die if someone looked at him. So, and that's not even including the fact that the engage was fantastic in these games. The engage by Archer here on the Sejuani in this game in particular was really, really good. Had some really clutch ultis and set his team up for success. So that's kind of how the series went. And Denver Nuggets did what they could. I know Lone Wolf was doing his best because his bot lane was having a rough series overall, but the wave clear and the big ultis just weren't there enough, and eventually they just ended up falling. I can't remember how the games ended, but do you recall CLT?
I don't quite remember. I know once the bot lane for Boomer Squad got unleashed, Bori just kind of went everywhere and started just doing Ziggs things to turrets. He was at 3 items, like very, very early in the game. So the moment Rakan just got a CC lock, or when Archer did Sejuani ult somebody, he just dropped Zigzar and it just one shot everybody.
Yeah, and these
So
these were quick games too, CLT, and that's another thing to know. This game particularly was a 20-minute game, and I think game one was a little longer, but yeah, only 24 minutes. So in total, they played 44 minutes of game time. And when they saw their chance to end, Boomer Squad was on top of it. Like, you would not think this team are a bunch of boomers based on their name, because these were like young guns looking to win and win fast. And then once they had a lead, they just took it and ran with it. So Boomer Squad to me is a team to watch out for as of right now, because they know how to control the game, and once they get that control, they don't let up.
yep.
So anything
What
else
is
other than that, or should I move on to our next series, CLT?
uh no, no, I think it was a good showing by Boomer Squad overall. Ziggs bot is something that teams are gonna have to keep an eye out for. It's just so annoying to play against. Um, so it's a good, real good showing for Boomer Squad.
Agreed. All right, let's go.
What's our next one?
So our next one is going to be between Sad Jellyfish and Summoner's Drift. So I know that you were here to cast this one with me, and it technically was a cast done after the fact the games were played, so I did know the outcome. So it took it out of it for me a little bit when it came to like the unknowing factor, but it was still a really fun series to watch. Sad Jellyfish mostly commanded the both games and had leads pretty early on, but Summoner's Drift held their own and stayed in the games even when all else seemed lost and pushed these games both over to 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and maybe touch on game one a little bit here. And the thing I'd like to start out first to note is the Zac ban. Sad Jellyfish was not allowing One Punch Zac to get Zac. That was not happening. And they did a heavy emphasis on him with 3 bans, Zac, Ivern, and Volibear, particularly in game one.
Yeah, I mean, if Zac is in your name, you're probably drawing a ban for it. Uh, it just the way it works in League. Um, there was a lot of fighting and a lot of pressure topside. I do remember this game one specifically. There's just Camille Renekton, whoever's jungler shows up first tends to swing that lane, and both junglers were up there for quite a few times to try and to swing the split push pressure um, either way. So um, Marcuti on the Leona stood out. Him and Shanti,
It's not that. I
uh,
can tell you it's Sean T. Like that.
Sean E. My apologies.
Yes.
They held their ground quite a bit. Bot side, I know Marcuti made a lot of things happen there and got a lot enabled Draven to get quite a few cash-ins up to swing it. But then once the map opened up, Zeri had a lot of good moments and fights too to put in a boatload of damage. But mainly for Sad Jellyfish, this top side of the map just it did a majority of the lifting. Salt on this Victor, boy, he looks scary on this Victor. Victor himself just being such an early game like lane bully, but then still scales well too. People who can play Victor, they affect the game in so many different ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Commander Haku and that Gwen just kind of doing whatever he wanted as well. We don't see a lot of Gwen jungle. Not a lot of players feel comfortable playing the pick, but he pulled it out, and that was the big thing too. The jungler just had an absolute field day this game. He was the top percentage of this team's damage, and once he got that early lead, a couple kills, he just started to exploit the map and pretty much take over most of the objectives, and not allow One Punch Zac to do too much on this Skarner. As you point out, Salt did do a lot of work. King Spook was doing his best to kind of maintain mid lane. Did even have a couple little nice picks here and there with his Q and Lux, but unfortunately, we all know once Victor scales up, he becomes a monster that's pretty much uncontrollable. And by the time this game ended, he was on 3 items. So he certainly was already scaled. He was getting to his late game, or pretty much at his late game. So he was not really going to be stopped. On the other side of things, there was obviously a bit of an item disadvantage in a couple spots, specifically in the top lane. Servade did not have his best series, and he was a bit behind. He wasn't able to do too much once the game fall apart, and that's partly why I think Renekton specifically can be hard to pull off in team play. The champion is very strong early, can win a lot of 1v1s and even some 1v2s, and even in some strange circumstances, some 1v3s because he's the Croc. But when he's behind, or if he's even, when he starts to get to these team fights, he's pretty much just ignored. He's not important, and that's basically what we saw once he did get in team fights, was they just blew him up and pushed past him and killed the rest of his team. So it was definitely a hard series for Summoner's Drift to stay in. But again, they were able to make small incremental plays here, whether it was getting a Drake or I want to say one of the games they might have got Baron. But yeah, being able to get something and stay in the games. And so that would lead me into game two specifically, because Game two was super, super fun to watch. And before I talk about anybody on the side of Sad Jellyfish, I just want to give a specific shout out to King Spook because he had one of the most unbelievable Orianna ultis you would ever see. Like, the whole mad call, shockwaves, or Faker shockwave finds them all. Like, that's what that was. He literally found them all, but they were just so behind at the point that that happened, and it didn't even matter. And it was so sad. So sad.
Yeah, yeah, it was a massive shockwave during the push that he got to try and turn around a team fight. But yeah, it was just they were so far behind at that point. This was, like you noted, a very fun game to watch. The top lane again had a lot of pressure, a lot of brawling. I thought the Jax pick was definitely a little bit in a better spot than say the Renekton game one. Um, and overall, the bot lanes, especially Shanti and Marcuti, had a massive impact. Marcuti was everywhere on that Braum. The moment the bot turret fell, he was everywhere. It felt like Summoner's Drift couldn't walk anywhere into a brush, and Marquiti was there tagging him with a Q or autoing him to set up the rest of his team. Uh, Marquiti really stood out this game too on that Braum.
Yeah, and the big thing is the wall there. It's it's called the Unbreakable Wall, I believe. It's there.
Yes.
It can block Sejuani ulti, so it can stop it from hitting anybody else besides his wall. If timed correctly, I'm pretty sure it can also block the Orianna ulti. Like there, and I feel like I actually saw him block one. I do feel like I think I saw that. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, put me in the comments, yell at me about my knowledge of the game. But I could have sworn that's what I saw, and that's how it works. But yeah, the Braum pick was fantastic. It was a perfect pick into Leona to allow for that disengage. So even if Leona goes in, even if she can lock down someone like this Ezreal or like this Hwei or even this Jace, it doesn't matter because Braum just drops the wall, drops the ult, and then they kite back. The Volibear was just more of there for early control, I feel like, in the game, and it's pretty good into Sejuani. So he just did his job, right? This game wasn't Commander Haku's game. This was, like you said, it was the bot lane. It was Marcuti and Shanti's moment to shine, and they did exactly that. And again, everybody else on the team played well on the side of Sad Jellyfish, right? Dippy had a good series and a good game here against Servade. But this game, there was more trading. Servade was able to find more opportunities, like you talked about, and duel pretty well into this Jax. The problem is, every time the Jax jumped in, the Jace smacked them away.
Yeah. Yep. And it's hard as Jax to even like play into to Braum Ezreal. Even if he jumps in, Ezreal still has Arcane Shift. Even if you look at Hwei, he can fear him away. So he found some really key moments, but it was just hard for him to capitalize on it. Um, I was hoping to see maybe like a ball combo where he jumped in and then Orianna would ult, but Marcuti's wall could block the reposition of the ball sometimes. So it was definitely a back and forth game, and it was definitely one of the more entertaining games this week.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll leave this series here then, and we'll move on to the next one. And we'll touch on. Let's see what is next. It is going to be. I'm sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce the name, but Team L versus Minimum Talent Esports. Unfortunately, guys, the game did not track in here, so I'm not able to show it. But we can talk about it a little bit. And what did the series for you like as far as the picks bands and what these teams did? What was your kind of opinion of it?
Uh, it was it was an interesting series. I know Team L picked mid and top first rotation on red side, which was very interesting. I thought normally you give one of your solo lanes like at least 4 or 5 pick to see what they're up against, but they just completely blinded Sion Syndra. That game one. Um, Amumu showed up on the other side for MTE. Uh, Amumu's definitely had a lot of priority this week. I know you picked it twice, and there was a couple of other guys that picked it. It's just a very safe, simple champ. Um, the keystones in this first game was also interesting. Dark Harvest on Syndra, PTA on J4. Um, was just interesting, but there was a couple of trades that Syndra got back, got some Dark Harvest stacks, and definitely showed what the theory was behind it. Um, the Milio pick over by MTE was also, I think, the only Milio pick this week. It also was utilized very interesting because it was a Gunblade AP Milio. Um, I thought that was interesting. I I think if that would have been picked in a better spot, say against tankier comps or just more rush down comps, that would have a lot more value. But in the Ezreal, Scion, Syndra, it's like that's going to be difficult to land a Q on or burst somebody down. It's still surprisingly healed and shield like fairly well. That was kind of shocking to me. But I don't know exactly how the scaling works on that. So uh, there was a big 4-man Amumu ult by MTE in this series that we can clip. It'll be on our channel. That tried to turn a game around. If I remember correctly, Orianna got picked off. Orianna had a lot of good ults in this game as well and did really well. Um, but yeah, no, it was an interesting game to watch overall. And then going into game two,
Well, before you jump into game two, I just want to
go
say
ahead.
the comps that we are referring to. The thing is that MTE comp was all based around just team fight wombo combo because they had the Oriana, as you already stated, the Amumu, and then also the MF and Ornn. So they wanted to fight as a team around objectives, and when they got those fights, they were winning them when they were layering everything. That big Amumu you talk about, that was a 4-man. It was followed up by like a 3-man MFR, just obliterating the team.
Hmm.
Or an Oriana might have been dead, like you said, or maybe she was like about to die. Maybe she got ulti up. I don't remember that particular point. But yeah, it was those types of fights were nuts. Whereas on the other side, the big thing to note was that Sion pick you spoke of. He just split pushed the whole map. He did whatever he wanted. No frame said, "Hey, guess what? I don't care what your ball comp does. I'm gonna make your ball comp send somebody over to me, and I'm gonna take your turrets in front of their face." And that's what he did. He completely took care of his Ornn, killed him a couple times solo, and just ran the map. Meanwhile, the rest of his team, the J4, the Ezreal, the Leona pick, and the Syndra, they just did their jobs. The Ezreal was strong, and the Syndra was strong. And if they ever did contest 4v5, most of the game, they kept themselves safe. That was the big things I wanted to point out about game one before jumping into game two. But game two, I feel like is a entirely different story. Game two was like they completely switched up their comps because we went from a wombo combo comp that MTE had to, I guess, kind of like a bit of a front to back pick comp. I mean, I don't know what you'd call it, but it had that Hwei, the Jinx, Skarner, Tarek, and the Heimerdinger. The Heimerdinger went top for clarification. Whereas on the other side, we had Amumu make a presence again, Jace, Kaisa, no frame on Gragas top, and Leona. So it was definitely a bit of a switch up for both teams.
Yeah, yeah. The Heimerdinger was kind of shocking. Mid wasn't showing at the time, so I was interested to see where the Heimer was going. Herrick Jinx, um, that had like I like the theory behind it because again, it's into like a Mumu Leona. So if they engage, like Tarek just drops ult, and what are you gonna do? But the Gragas actually was kind of big brained behind it because the moment you see the Tarek ult come down, you just throw the Gragas ult and it separates everybody. So Tarek gets less value on the ult. Um, yeah, there was a lot of interesting like wrinkles and interactions built into this draft that was something I wasn't planning on seeing. We've seen Skarner jungle again. That seems to be like some people tend to gravitate towards it. Some people have mixed opinions on it. So we'll see how that develops throughout the split.
Yeah. The Gragas was actually really good too. No frame. He had a great Zion game, and then that Gragas game, he just kept dropping ults right on top of this Heimerdinger, pushing him into himself, and then giving him the good old fat body slam. So
Yep.
it was really really hilarious to watch this Gragas just do kind of
Yeah.
what he wanted. Um, I feel like the Amumu, though we've seen it multiple times, it didn't have as much presence in this game. Nor, and I will bring it back to mine. I didn't really do much in my games. Like we were there to do our jobs, and that was it. And that's exactly what Team L's jungler did on the Amumu. That's what I did on the Amumu. It wasn't really doing a lot of work, but it was doing its job. Um, the Jace did go mid, and he went for the phase rush into the Hwei. How do we feel about that matchup? Do we know, is it Jace favorite or is it Hwei favorite? Like, I have no idea.
Hwei can stand his ground in that lane quite well. Jace does have opportunities. I think once he gets a serrated Dirk and a couple backs, uh, it just there's so many different wrinkles to how you play Jace. If you go phase rush, you can go in and out. If you go like Conquer, you can kind of be in your face and brawly, which is I think is more designed for like top laners. But I was surprised I didn't see first strike because at the beginning, Jace does have range on Hwei. Once Hwei gets a couple of like key items and just skill points overall, Wei can definitely have opportunities to poke with Jace and burst him down.
Yeah. So I would say overall for this series, the biggest factor for me and why the side of Team L won was just the simple fact that they were farming so much better than Team MTE. They were definitely losing on that front. So the individual lanes were just so far behind that even when they got to fight in either series, they just didn't have enough gold, and so they were never even. They were always behind. It didn't matter what was happening on the map, whether Team L was taking a Drake or a Baron or a turret, because at the end of the day, how can you contest if you're always coming to every fight behind due to massive farm gaps? So that was the biggest thing about that series. Props to Team L though and Team MTE for playing a fun little series to watch. It was relatively short as well, but it was a good time to see these new teams again. These are new teams compete here in LOL Midwest Sweat League. So we will go ahead and go on to our next series, which was Team 2 versus this says TBD guys, but it's Load the Cannons. I gotta get on Frozen. He's still yet to update his team's name. I don't know if maybe they can't, but he should be able to. But it is Load the Cannons. So this series, Load the Cannons did win the series, and it was very fun to watch on the side of particularly this uh, Silas pick mid in game one and watching Frozen just do Frozen things. I always like watching Frozen. He just kind of controlled the map well. So, what are your kind of thoughts on this series, CLT?
My thoughts were I was kind of interested to see how the series goes. We know both teams had some subs, so they weren't exactly at full power. Um, but the draft was interesting. With a sub, I think Team had a sub ADC and top laner. So the top laner, I believe, first picked Aatrox. It must have been just a comfort pick, and he performed really, really well. Um, but yeah, I know Load the Cannon's mid laner, I believe, was a sub. And don't give this dude Silas. Just don't. Um, it was insane. I thought his damage was going to be kind of low due to the build, but he just was one-shotting everything. He got so far ahead. 39% of his team's damage, basically building like AP Bruiser-ish, was just nutty. He had a Quadra, I think, to end this game, and he just got completely out of hand. Um, team tried to stabilize the mid game with a lot of top pressure. I know Alves had a lot of good counter ganks up top when Frozen was trying to swing that Kled Aatrox matchup into their favor. So that was entertaining to watch. But Yeah, it started to get rough watching this Silas just go anywhere he pleased. I think he had like a two turret dove at one point just to try and kill the team's bot lane. Yeah, there was just nothing they could do.
Yeah, no, not at all. And the really the big thing for me was not just the Silas, but it was just Zelda picking LeBlanc there. I don't really like it, and I know we talked about it when we were in the cast, but because you brought it up first, and when you kind of break it down, it doesn't really fit the comp that Team Two was drafting.
I I've played against Zelda and he's a very very proficient LeBlanc. He really likes that champion. And he did get banned out on some of the more recent stuff he's picked up. I know he's played Malzahar. He's really gravitated towards the Aurora. And he's even talked to me and tried to tell me about how good Vel'Koz is, which I'm a believer. Like, good Vel'Kozes are scary. So he definitely got banned out a little bit. The LeBlanc pick, if you're proficient at it, it's scary, but man, that's a hard comp to play it into. If you get CC'd even once, it feels like there's just a million other CC and abilities getting thrown at you. And even if you can get out, you've got stuff like Zac, Kled ult, Kai'Sa ult that can just follow um, to kind of limit your slipperiness. So yeah, he tried his best in the game, and he even had some moments where you can definitely tell he's proficient. He plays the champion well. He was just really behind. He still put up like decent damage numbers. 24% of his team's damage is still respectable. Um, but yeah, I felt like there was definitely some better picks. I don't know his full champion pool or what he's comfortable with, or if he's just trying to get into if he's just in early season form, he's going to warm up. But yeah, this LeBlanc pick kind of stood out as kind of off theme for their comp.
Yeah. So touching on game two a little bit. Once again, guys, we don't have. I don't know why Battlefy doesn't seem to want to always catch these games, but do you have the comp by chance for the viewers?
I do, I do. So this was uploaded on our YouTube if you want to go watch the full game. But this had Ezreal, Braum, Team had Ezreal, Braum, Zac, Mordekaiser, because the Aatrox got banned out, and then Zelda on Hui. That is definitely one of his more signature picks. I know he played it a lot last split. And then for Load the Cannons, we had Rel, Jinx, Shyvana. I think it was our only Shyvana in week one. And then the surprise pick was Mundo top with then Smolder mid. So um, it was a very scaly type of team comp. I'll load the Cannons. And I thought Team 2 was on a timer. I also thought with Shyvana, Rel, Mundo, Team only having like Ezreal, Hui. Mordekaiser can tank shred a little bit, but eventually he just falls off on that unless he builds super glass cannony, but then he gets blown up. So it's kind of like pick which hill you want to die on. Um, I know Smolder got a lot of stacking early in laning phase, which elevated and scaled him really well. But then Zelda on this way in the mid game when we casted it. He had a lot of good roams, good TPs, good ults. He can definitely showed why he plays that champion. Hui in the hands of a good player is insane.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the series like overall, we were talking about this Silas, who's another person I know. His name is Rurika. Really, really good in that game. His Smolder was also pretty good, but the big thing was Frozen Ace. Like he really took over the series as far as jungling, especially in that Shyvana game, and he just had the control. And he loves to play around objectives. So when I saw him pick that Shyvana, I knew exactly what he was gonna do, and I called it. And look where he was doing Drake early on at like level, I don't know, 4 or 5 or something on that Shyvana. I don't even think he backed it. I could be wrong, but and that's really what Shyvana wants to do, right? She wants to get those objectives. She scales off Drakes. He just took control, and he was behind turrets, throwing Shyvana Q's at people, or is it E? Is it Z? I forget.
Yeah, that's Shyvana Z.
Okay, I'm sorry. Shyvana's E at people, and just looked like he was having a good old time, doing kind of what he wanted on the pick. Uh, but yeah, I can't, fully remember everything. Kind of listen to your, what you're saying about the comps, but I do agree on the Zelda having a pretty good game there, making up a little bit for the LeBlanc game. Uh,
Yeah.
what was the support again for both sides?
So Team had Ezreal Braum bot lane, and it was against Jinx Rel. And
Right.
looking back at it, Jinx Rel had an early push and then met Shyvana at Dragon at level 5, which he called immediately.
Yeah. So I remember us talking about that Rel Shyvana. That's why, not Rel Shyvana. I'm sorry, Rel Braum, a bit. So I tried to explain it in the chat when we were casting the game, but Braum is actually pretty decent into Rel. There are obviously points where Rel is really like good into Braum too, but the thing is, when Rel tries to engage, Braum can actually use his Glacial Fissure to cancel her jump in, so he can completely negate the Rel engage if played properly. The problem is, I don't know how comfortable the guy was on Braum. I really not sure. It didn't seem like that was really his pick. So he was struggling a little bit on the Braum, and every time that he used the wall and he used his major abilities, here was the Rel just getting off free engages, right? Because now Rel has her strength. You have nothing. I'm going in and I'm gonna kill your AD carry. The Rel pick though was really really good. I loved the Rel pick overall. Like I think it's fit what the side of Load the Cannons wanted to do there in game two, and they just kind of took off and controlled the series and ended up winning 2-0. So, was there anything else to note for you for this series?
Um, no, no, there was a lot of back and forth top lane. Wasn't as much attention up there as it was game one. But it was hard to judge these teams based on just the amount of subs and everything that they had. But it definitely showed that there's going to be some growth. These two teams are going to be two to watch out for going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to say Striker did fill in and played honestly decent considering the situation. And he was subbing in for Geico, who is definitely one of the premier 80 carries in our league. He's very very good. So I'm looking forward to him being back soon. As well as far as the mid lane, I believe from what I understand, Rurika will be taking that spot. It shows his name here on Battlefy as what's that? Marchionis, Marchionis. Yeah, but he will be taking the spot as a starter. So this should basically be what Load the Cannons looks like moving forward. But overall, yes, he technically was a sub in that circumstance, but I think they called him in as to become the starter.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was that series. We got, I believe, one more series left to talk about. Yes, we do, and that's going to be what I believe to be the series of the week, and not just because it went three, but that does help. That is Big Back Laners versus Washed Up Gamers. Was the first series of the split, the first series of the week, and man, was an absolutely banger series between the two teams. So we have three games to talk about. So we're gonna take it's gonna take some time to get through it all, but let's just start off with game one. What were your thoughts on game one?
Game one, boy. This was a rough start for washed up gamers. It Fiora got out of control. Bot lane got out of control. Um, it was it got off rough. Washed up gamers tried to put up a fight. Smalls had a couple decent Kennen ults when they engaged, but it just ended up, he was too far behind to really put in the necessary damage to get some kills and some shutdowns. Um, yeah, there was this game was over with very quickly. This was almost a sub 20-minute game.
Yeah, this was the one that was certainly just a slaughter fest. Washed up gamers, they looked washed up in this series. Okay, let me tell you. At first, before they turned it around, and this game was the one they took it pretty hard. Pretty much across the board, they were outplayed. The most quiet matchup I think was the Yone versus the Kennen. There wasn't too much going on, and neither of them really did a lot in game. Levi only finished with a total of uh, 1-0-5, so he wasn't in on much of the team kills. And Smalls literally was the exemplary of doing nothing in that series at first, going 0-3. Like in the beginning, he just my man was there. He got no assists, no kills, just died. It was really unfortunate because I feel like that Kennen pick really could have done work here. I don't think it's bad into what big backlaners have picked here. Uh, but yeah, it was pretty much just a slaughter fest across the board. And that would be where we first picked Leona the first time, which, if I haven't said it, she's got 100% pick ban rate across the board. Okay,
Jeez.
100% presence. I won't say it again, I swear. It's just, it's,
Oh
it's,
no, we're saying it again.
it's got me giddy, okay? It's got me giddy. But yeah, so there really wasn't much that happened in this first game. It just pretty much was the Kai'Sa doing whatever she wanted and the Fiora doing whatever she wanted with the Leona and the Ivern to just back them up to take over the game, and that's pretty much what happened here. Let's go into game two, where it started to get a little more spicy. The games were much closer here on out, and that's where we saw the first Amumu pick, and this is where the Amumu was very good and played very well by our friend of the show, Soup, who just had a fantastic, fantastic game two here, along with Smalls on that Vlad.
Yeah, that was a first pick Vlad, by the way. That was just straight B1. Uh, I don't think either team knew what was coming, and Smalls is like, just give me the Vlad, and he played it well. The Annie answer into it, while can kind of set up the rest of the team to CC Vlad. It just overall the Vlad just got out of control. Vlad is just a nutty champion for people that know how to play it. You gave a shout out to Soup. The one thing I did notice was I thought Soup built basically correct. The Leander's Torment, but then the Abyssal Mask to just dive in, get the Amumu passive through the ult on everybody, and then Abyssal Mask just lowers everybody's MR. It's like Vlad just goes in and one-shots the whole team. I felt was a very key pickup. I think that was the only Abyssal Mask of the week. Don't quote me on that. Um, but Souls had a really good showing on this set as well. Definitely, I think the fighters for him are shined a lot better uh, compared to like the first game when he played Orin. And I felt like the washed up gamers comp game one was just kind of a sit back and do nothing comp. This one they definitely felt a lot more proactive with the Assault, the Moo, the Souls on the set.
Yeah.
So
I agree, and it also felt like they just flipped the switch. They went from washed up gamers to gamers so quick, and
yep,
a lot of that had to do with Soup being able to be in every lane so often. I mean, I think in the first 5 or 6 minutes he basically just ganked literally in this order: bot, mid, top, and he just did whatever he wanted, and was ganking over and over and over again, and that's a big part of why his damage numbers were higher. And of course, building that Leandries does help too. I think for me personally, and this is just a me as a player, I do like that build, but I feel like for me, I like to be a little tankier, so I prefer more of an aftershock tank Amumu build. But I do think that this is probably the most correct build to go for, especially if you expect to win games on Amumu. So you're right. He had the best build that you could have, and he showed why that is by the way he played. The man played absolutely unbelievable on that Amumu pick here in game two. And again, shout out to Smalls, who, man, you went from 0-3 doing nothing to just 8-0-7 saying, this is my game, I will not die, and just took control of the map. It was really fun to watch. Something I want to note, though, is Orin, and I've noticed this as we've been talking about the games, it feels like he has been winning a lot. Now, I don't really know where he lies in the top lane picks. Like, I don't know where his win rate is right now. But it does seem that it's not what it used to be, at least for team play, because he's just not picking up the wins like he used to.
I feel like Orin has a hard time sometimes getting off the ground. You feel like you need to protect him a little bit. If junglers go up and gank Orin, they can put him behind really well. But it's also just team comp dependent. I don't think Orin is as blind pickable as say something like a Scion, or even like Mundo. I know Mundo needs a lot more resources. But once Mundo gets off the ground, it's just hard to stop him. Orin, He definitely values the levels and the game length more so than gold and resources. Once the Ornn items kick in, though, he has a tremendous value there. I just don't think these games are going long enough to get the full value out of the champion.
Yeah, I agree. They have been much quicker games overall across the board. We haven't had a lot of 30 plus minute games or even 35 plus minute if we had any, to be honest. Uh, I do want to say, Low the man did have another good game here, and the Sezreal did his best to make up for the lack of, other lanes, what was happening on the map. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. And even though he's farmed pretty decently well, he had almost 8 CS a minute. It just wasn't enough. And maybe if the game went a little longer, like we talked about, where the Orange is able to give everybody the items, which he was at level 15, so he was should have been able to give items at that point. I don't know how the
Yeah.
workings is to give him over to each champion, but I probably should have went on Ezreal first, and I feel like it did. I feel like the Triforce was upgraded, but maybe they just needed a little more damage out of him at that point.
Yeah, Ornn upgrades his own items at 13, and then every level past 13, he can give allies a an upgrade.
Okay.
So at level 15, he should have been able to hand out 2 upgrades. I don't think Battlefly represents the Ornn items in
No,
the inventory.
I don't see it here. But I do distinctly remember Ezreal having it. I just don't know if Annie or if someone else on the team had it theirs yet. But you know, sometimes the cookie crumbles the way it crumbles, and it just does seem like this Ornn is lacking something. Maybe it needs to be buffed, or maybe teams just aren't really knowing how to play it, or maybe it's even something different. Like maybe teams just know how to play into it better now. So it's just something I wanted to note as we've been talking about the games here. But
Yeah, it's
let's lead into game three here, CLT, and uh, kind of talk about this last game of the series.
yeah. This was a banger game. This is probably the most entertaining game of week one in my opinion. For those that haven't watched the level one, there's a clip on our channel now. There was a massive level one invade that Washed Up Gamers turned around, and then it was just an absolute brawl fest. Top lane, mid lane, you name it. There was fighting everywhere. If you like those type of games, check this one out.
Absolutely. And I just talked about over 35 minutes. Here's the game. I don't
Yep.
remember any other games, but this was the game. And yeah, it wasn't just a brawl fest. It was a death fest for most people. I really
Great
don't want
Stream Simulator.
I don't want to I don't want to call this player out. I'm not here to do that. That's not what I'm here to do. But you got to take pride in knowing you nearly died 20 times in the Sweat League, man. You really do. That Blitzcrank was getting good hooks at times too, by the way. But 19 deaths, a bit of a rough game for him. Maybe he was tired after the first two, but man, was that
I was wondering if his team was going to report him after that game, but then he would just land a couple good hooks, and it's like, oh, okay, he's here for a reason. No offense to the Blitz, but yeah, he invaded level one and tried to ignite the jungler when he had uh, no real like prio, and I don't think the wave was even at the fully at the turret, and then just died for that. At one point, it was like 5-0 to wash up gamers, and I'm like, okay, this might be a quick stomp. But yeah, he had some couple key hooks in the mid game, and overall there was a lot of good fighting. Levi really looked solid on this Yone. I know early in the Lissandra it can be kind of a rough lane, but after you get some lifesteal and get some crit, um, he can really fight back into Lissandra.
no, and this was certainly Levi's best game. Game one, like I said,
Oh yeah.
was decent, and he was also on the Yone. But this one, I think he really got to shine and show people why Yone is one of his picks that should be looked at when you're breaking down the draft for this team. He really, really did have a good game here, and he kept his team in with a couple clutch plays. I remember him getting at least two or three different three-man Yone R's and just controlling the map at times. But it takes more than one player, and unfortunately, like I said, he was really the only one really having a good game. Renekton wasn't bad, but I feel like Renekton was more of just like catching people out at random times. I remember people like backing weird spots on the side of washed up gamers, and this Renekton just coming over here and be like, "Hello," and just getting a free kill. So the man ended up finishing with 15 kills. But it was a really 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 fun game. You know, we go from a blowout in game one, which then you think the series will be over because you're just like, oh, this team just must be better, to what is your expected game two, where you know you're thinking the team recovers and they might be able to pull it out, but they don't. But the opposite happened. They actually saw Washington Wizards pull it out, to where the game three is normally what you'd think would be the blowout at that point, into the closest game of the series. And it was so much fun to cast. I had such a blast. And
Yeah.
again, Soup just popped up on this Amumu again too. I just the man did majority of his team damage, by the way, in this game here. 27% highest percentage. So he had a one heck of a series, and a heck of a 2 game stretch here on this Amumu. Was there anything else to note for this series for you?
Um. No, no. I think the Seraphine support, Seraphine Vayne bot lane was kind of an interesting wrinkle. I don't know if that's just comfort picks or what. Um, I think that was our only Seraphine, actually only Seraphine and Vayne of week one. And into Jin was quite interesting. Um, they had a rough laning phase, but the game went on so long that Vayne finally recovered and got back. Um, but yeah, no, this was entertaining. I mean, it was an 81 kill game for 37 minutes. It was there was a lot going on. I don't know how you pulled off that cast.
Yeah, more than 2 kills a minute, man. More than 2 kills a minute. Well, that had a
Yeah.
lot to do with, I believe, Brian. Yeah, Brian cast this with me. So thank you, Brian, for that, because that was a lot of fun. Hopefully, he'll be on the show at some point to talk some league and break down some stuff with us. Um, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that was your week one recap, guys. That was the full breakdown. This video is getting a little long. We're already over an hour, and I don't want to go too much longer than this. But just
Cool.
to kind of give y'all a quick little rundown as we're going into week two, what the games are going to be, um, and to note there are teams on buys. So Scorch and Zoomers in their groups had buys, and this is due to the fact that there are 7 teams in each group. So for clarification, that's why you see that on here on Battlefy. But the week two, we're looking at some matchups here. Small Brains will not be playing, but we do have Insane Banana Posse against Denver Nuggets, which I am excited to see those 2 teams play each other because they both looked very good in week one. So I'm excited to see who's going to pick up their first win. And then we have Scorch versus Summoner's Drift. Scorch has been a mainstay across the league here, many splits now. So I'm excited to see them back in action again here against Summoner's Drift, who I think once they find themselves could be one of those good teams here in the league. We have Boomer Squad versus Sad Jellyfish. Unfortunately, they did play their games yesterday, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get the VODs for that, so we might not have a breakdown of this series for week two. But you could unfortunately already see that they did pick up the win. That is your champs, the Sad Jellyfish, from last split picking up the win. And then as far as Group B, we have Team L, who's on a bye, and then we have MTE versus Load the Cannons. Should be a fun series. Zoomers versus Washed Up Gamers. I'm really looking forward to that because Zoomers looked good in their series, and Washed Up Gamers was so fun. So let's see if they can kind of keep that magic going. And then Team 2 versus Big Back Laners to see who can pick up their first win of the split, and hopefully Team 2 has their full lineup to do so. That's kind of your rundown of what next week is going to look like, what we're going to be seeing. So is there anything you want to touch on that, CLT, before we get ready to close off the video here?
No, not really. I mean, I think as you noted, Leona, Amumu, like super high priority for a lot of players in this league. But overall, I'd be curious to see just how these teams improve, what they take away from week one, if there's any other spicy picks, who's going to be the first one to play Aurora, those type of questions that hopefully we can get answered in week two and start to see who looks consistent. Team two, I think, versus big black laners is probably be a very entertaining matchup. If Geico happens to play this week, he's going to be the one to watch. See his introduction to the split.
Yeah, it'll definitely be fun and to see their series. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it then. I don't think we have too much to talk about. Something to note, we are going to be trying to get a better version of the show eventually. This is our first run through. We're not as good as we'd like to be, but we would like to eventually bring other things in. Like we've talked a little bit about having guests on the show. Maybe we'll try that next week. We're talking about doing like actually having maybe some highlights or maybe being able to play some clips while to show you guys kind of what we're talking about. We'll do our best to get to that point, but cut us some slack now. We're trying our best. We're doing this because we want to give some more content to you guys. Um, if you have any, things you want us to maybe try to improve on, or you got any suggestions, feel free to drop in the comments or message either of us on Discord. Um, Other than that, CLT, you have anything else?
Uh, yeah, if you're gonna flame us, be nice, please.
Yes, yes, be nice. We are not professionals at this. This is my first time
Nope,
ever doing something like this.
mine as well.
So, with all that said, thank you for all that have come to watch today. And again, we look forward to having Midwest Weekly next week and to continue it throughout the split. So, thank you all again. Have a wonderful night. Well, day, whatever the time of day/night you're watching this. And we will see you next time on your episode of Midwest Weekly. That'll be CLT and Hairwiz out. Thank you so much.
Later.